Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. In this video, I am going to talk about open source licenses. Now, this is not going to be a super in-depth video. I just want to basically answer the question, what does it mean when I say MIT license? And we're going to talk about that. Or what does it mean when I say the Apache 2.0 license? That's basically the question we're going to answer in this video. And it all starts with open source software. So open source software, or OSS, is a type of computer software. I'm going to read this verbatim because it's a good description, in which the source code is released under a license in which the copyright holder grants users the rights to use, study, change, and distribute the software to anyone and for any purpose. And if you watch Coding Garden, all of the code that I write, all of my software, is open source software. So if you go to GitHub and you go to my organization, you can see my code. Now, I'll mention, just because my code is on GitHub does not mean that it's open source. And that's basically what I'm going to talk about in this video. All of my repos have a license associated with each of the code in that repo, and that specifically is what makes that thing open source. So I'll show, for example, today we were working on the drop game. Can everyone join me in dropping? Just say drop me, and it will drop your avatar. Yeah, like that. Or I can do this, and they'll get trails like that. Ooh, or I can turn the trails off. So the code that's running that overlay is open source software. And if we take a look at the repo, we can see that I have this license right here. And if you read this license, it says, permission is hereby granted free of charge to any person obtaining a copy of this software and associated documentation files to deal in the software without restriction, including without limitation to the rights to use, copy, modify, merge, publish, distribute, sublicense, and or sell copies of the software. Now, and the cool thing about that is people can contribute here. We see that we have some pull requests open. That trail thing that I just showed you is actually a feature that was added by somebody else. So this is an example of open source software. It's code that I've written. I've put the MIT license on it. Other people can basically take this code and do what they want with it, etc. So that is open source software. Now, there's a lot of implications of that, like the idea that anybody is actually allowed to look at the source code, and anybody is. Like you can go here and you can look at all the code that's required to make that overlay work. That's, I think, a benefit to it. But there are different aspects to it. But as was mentioned, every open source project should have some sort of open source license that is tied to it. Now, I mentioned that I use the MIT license, and like what Doc is saying is the MIT license is AKA you won't sue me if this code burns your house down license. Yes. So basically, the MIT license is kind of like, you are free to do whatever you want with this source code. Like, you could monetize it. Somebody could literally take the source code for my overlay. They could set up a website, supercooloverlays.com, and they could charge people $100 to add that overlay to their stream. I am allowing them to do that. Basically, I'm saying you can redistribute my code, you can put it, like, sublicense it, you can change it, you can monetize it, you can do literally whatever you want with it. However, there's this clause at the very bottom. Thanks for the idea. Yeah, you're welcome to. But this clause says, this software is provided as is without warranty of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to the warranties of merchantability, fitness for a particular purpose, and non-infringement. In no event shall the authors or copyright holders be liable for any claim, damages, or other liability, whether in action of contract, tort, or otherwise arising from, out of, or in connection with the software, or the use of other dealings in the software. Good day, sir. So basically what this says is I'm not responsible for what you do with it. So if you decide to make a business out of my overlay and you charge people money for it, and something goes wrong, if their streaming computer burns down, you cannot blame me. You can't blame me. I wrote the code, you can use it, but I am not responsible for that. And again, I guess I didn't mention at the beginning, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just telling you in general, this is what it is. You can look into it more. I said good day, sir. So that's why I choose the MIT license. Like, I want people to be able to look at my source code. I myself, oh buddy, welcome friends. We're in the middle of a YouTube video. As you can see, we did some work on my overlay today so it can actually handle all the chats. Thank you very much for being here. Boga hey, welcome. Raid. Wow. Oh, perfect. No, this is perfect. Okay, so here's the thing. We've been working on a new overlay. So here's what I need you to do. Okay, so anybody that's in the chat, type drop me, and you should see your overlay. Or actually, if you do drop and then do like a boga pecan or something like that, like this, you'll see it fall from the sky. And we did some work on my overlay recently to allow for thousands and thousands of drops. It shouldn't. This is pretty good. You know what? I'm extremely proud of the fact that the overlay isn't dying. My chat overlay isn't dying for the most part. it's all holding up. But welcome, Raiders. We're actually in the middle of talking about open source software. It's gonna get messy. So we're actually talking about what it means to be open source, and what I was mentioning is this overlay, this thing where you see all these drops. That actually is open source software. I hate that I can see it. I see it. But the code for that overlay is here on GitHub, and basically what I'm talking about is the fact that, so for one, you could click that link and you could look at the source code. You could see how this whole thing is coded. But that alone isn't what makes it open source software. The fact that I have the MIT license on it is what makes it open source software. I want to see you keep up with the chat now. And thank you all for the follows. And huge shout out to Kip Boga. Thank you for the raid. Oh, man. If you haven't heard, check him out. Oh, you had Sushi Dragon on the stream? I'm gonna have to go watch the VOD. I'm a fan of Sushi Dragon too. That's awesome. Cool. How'd it go? Was it good? Was it good? Sushi was great. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, and shout out to Sushi Dragon too if you have not heard of him. Yeah, and Signorambra with 100 bits says the Apache is the best license. So, actually, like, we were technically in the middle of YouTube content. Like, I was making a clip that we're gonna. Maybe I'll leave this in. I'll probably leave this in because this is fun. This is fun. But also, if you want some serious Twitch entertainment, did I not spell that right? How do you spell his name? Go just search for Sushi Dragon. He's awesome. Okay, but yeah, so what I mentioned, oh, the Sushi Dragon. Oh, okay, I got it. The Sushi Dragon. Cool. Yeah. Click that link. You're in for some serious entertainment. Okay. What were we talking about? The MIT license. Like I mentioned, I put all of my source code under the MIT license. This is a license that I like. I don't care if you take my code and you make something that makes money. That's fine with me. That's why I use the MIT license. And there are different types of open source licenses. So one type are permissive license, and the MIT license is a type of permissive license. And basically it means, like, you can take my code, you can do whatever you want with it, I'm just not liable. And the Apache license, which was just mentioned, has a very similar idea, but the Apache license is a bit longer. It's a whole lot longer. So if you look at the MIT license, it's very consumable, right? It's you can read it in one go. There's not too much legalese, but the Apache license is much more explicit. No. So I'll say this: my chat overlay has been pen tested by thousands of people, and especially today. For whatever reason, today there are a lot of people that came along and started to cross-site script me. But all we say is, you're allowed to try and cross-site script me, but you have to say hello first. If your first message is a cross-site script attempt, you're timed out. So just say hi. Just say hi first. But the Apache license is much more explicit. It basically takes this section here of the MIT license, and Signoromba, thank you for the 150 bits. One other cheer, I want to see how many code holds up. Oh, how the code holds up, nice. What was the rest of your message? GitHub is the same username. Oh, cool. But yes, so the Apache license, very similar, but it's much more explicit. It's much more explicit. Yeah, and someone just asked the question. Hi. Someone asked the question, should I put a license on every piece of software that I release? The answer is yes, and I'm going to talk about that at the very end, because there's this really nice website how to choose an open source license, and they have a description of what does it mean if you don't put a license on your source code. Cool, but yes, the reason a lot of people choose the Apache license is because it basically takes this section here, which says I'm not liable, and it expands it and makes it a whole lot more explicit, so that you're really not liable. So a lot of people prefer the Apache 2.0 license as well. So those are more permissive licenses. That's what I like to use, because I write a lot of stuff. Like, you can go to my GitHub, github.com/codinggarden. I've been doing these live streams for like 2.5 years. We have over 100 repositories. You can watch me write the code in the video. You can look at the code directly. For me, it's a way to share, and people can learn from the code that I've written. So I have no problem if you take the things that I've written and turn it into a business or something like that. So that's why I like MIT. It's permissive. Now, on the opposite spectrum, there's also what are known as copyleft licenses, which basically say that if you use this in your project must be under this exact same license. And there are also licenses that basically say, like, you cannot monetize this. You cannot make money from it. Look at all these follows. Thank you. It's kind of scary to see because we got follow-botted earlier, but I think you all are real people. Say hi if you're real. Can I get a smile in the chat if you're a real person? Or are we being follow-botted? It's very possible we're being follow-botted again. Oh, thank you all. Hello. Hello. Cool. But copyleft. So basically, it potentially forces the person using that library to also make their code open source. I've heard this called like a more viral license. And if you've ever worked in a corporate environment, oh, look at all those smiles. If you've ever worked in a more corporate environment, they are typically very cautious and very picky about the libraries you use, because if you're in a corporate environment and you're trying to write software that makes money, you could potentially use something that has a copyleft license, like the GPL, the GNU public license. And if it does, then you're forced to take your corporate make money codes and make it copyleft as well. And people don't like that. So that's the other type of licenses. I think that's the main things I wanted to talk about. Like, you have your super permissive license, you have the copyleft licenses, and I guess I'll show you this. This is a really cool website. It kind of like walks you through choosing an open source license. So you can say, which of the following best describes your situation? I care about sharing improvements. And so I haven't gotten into the politics or the, what's the word? Like the reasons why you would do a certain thing. But if you care about sharing improvements, then you would choose this. Because basically this says, if you make an upgrade or a change to my source code, it must be released under the same license, meaning that other people can benefit from those changes as well. But if you want it to be simple and permissive, you could do that. And that's why I choose the MIT license. I want it simple and permissive. But you could choose that. And then they show you the MIT license. Basically, you could just like copy and paste this and put it in your source code. Oh, thank you, Newman. So you could do that. And then there are other ones as well. I need to work in a community. There's like the Apache one, all that good stuff. Now, this website also has... This is the question that was asked earlier. What happens if you don't choose a license? And we can click right here to see it. So if you release code on GitHub, like I mentioned earlier, if you release code on GitHub, that doesn't instantly mean that it's open source. You've shared the source code, yes, but here's actually the implications. So when you make a creative work, which includes code, the work is under an exclusive copyright by default. Unless you include a license that specifies otherwise, nobody else can copy, distribute, or modify your work without being at risk of takedowns, shakedowns, or litigation. Now, I will say that this varies by country, but for the most part, this is what it means. Like, if you release code on GitHub and you don't put a license on it, technically, if somebody were to take your source code and build something else with it, you could get a lawyer and say, hey, I don't want you doing that. Or you could do like a cease and desist or something like that. And because you don't have a license, you're technically allowed to do that. But if you put a license, that actually makes it more likely for somebody else to take your source code and modify and use it and stuff like that. So I'll throw this in the chat. You may not realize this, but if you don't have a license on your source code, that's actually what it means. So there's that. Awesome. Next thing I'll show you is this really cool tool. So I typically write things in JavaScript, and I'd use node.js. If you're a coder, you might be cringing right now, but I like Node. I just really like Node. If you're in my world, you could use a tool like License. Now, I'm sure there's other tools for other languages and other frameworks in runtimes and stuff like that. I like Node. Okay. But License is really cool. You can actually just do npx license and then specify the license name, and it will literally just generate that license file in the directory. What about example code? Yeah, I mean, technically, example code needs to have a license as well. Yeah. At the same time, without a license, if someone uses your code and burns it down their house, they could potentially sue you, right? Because it doesn't have that like limited liability, like whatever you do with this is your fault, not mine. Because it doesn't have that, technically, the reverse is true. They could sue you. Yeah. It's not that controversial. We just see a lot of people coming from like compiled languages and stuff like that, or people hating on JavaScript. But yeah, this tool is really cool. npx license. Also, this is my break timer. Let's take a quick stretch. I'm talking really fast. I'm kind of excited. There's a lot of people here. Let's all take a stretch. Yeah, I stole your code, but it's your fault my house burned down. I'm excited too. Nice. Cool. So, yeah, let's see. Dark Thor is saying, if you release a library code and you put an open source license on it, then find out that someone is using your code to oppress, kill, or harm others, can you pull permission for them to use your code? I don't think you could pull permission. It's like, this is tricky. And like, this gets into the politics of it. Like, technically, if you released it under MIT, the only provision is that they show the MIT license in the software that they're creating. They basically say, I'm using this library and it was under MIT. I don't really know the answer to that. My inclination is I don't think you can. Like, if you've already released it that way, it has to stay that way. Which is why you might not choose to release it at all. Like, if you know that your software could potentially be used for bad things, maybe you just don't release it. But yeah, well, thank you, Paranoid Android. Oh, thank you, viewer. Yeah. And it is interesting to see. Like, I work with a lot of beginners, and like, open source is just kind of this like elusive thing, but we can learn about it. We can learn. Very cool. Thank you for the bits. I didn't even see that. Yeah, it gets complex. I'm not. I do. Just say no. I just say no. Okay. What I'm showing you is npx license. You put the name, and what that does, that actually generates a file that has that license inside of it. So for me, this is really easy. I already use the MIT license. I can just run this in any directory, and it automatically generates that license file. I don't have to what do you call it? I don't have to copy and paste it from the web. Here it is. You can also set up some defaults. So my default, I think, is like my Git username or something like that, so which is why it says that. But I could set this up to be like Coding Garden, like that. But yeah, it's nice. It just like generates the file. And they have a lot of other licenses you could choose from. You could run the command, it generates them, which is awesome. I think that's mainly it. That's mainly most of the open source stuff I wanted to talk about. I think I lost it. There was a message that came in earlier that was basically like, okay, and now we're in more like practical terms. So now you know what open source is. You know that you should have a license on your open source software. But then we start to get into the specifics of it. Okay, so let's say you are writing a CSS library. You're writing the next Bootstrap. You're writing your next big awesome thing. And you want to include normalized CSS in your source code. Now, normalized CSS has the MIT license, right? So it basically has this very permissive license, like I mentioned, that I like to use. But there is this clause right here that says, the above copyright notice and this permission shall be included in all copies or substantial portions of the software. So what this means is that if you decide to use this source code in your own library, you technically need to include a copy of this license that says Nicholas Gallagher and Jonathan Neal. You need to include that copy. And so what does that mean exactly? And the nice example I found was actually of Discord. Yeah. So if you look at Discord and you go in and click on acknowledgements, that will launch a web page. And you can see this nice little game-style credits. But basically, this is every single open source library that Discord uses in their application. And then if you click on View Licenses, it's kind of the same thing. It's basically a list of every single package. Here it is. Like, if you're in the Node.js world, you know that these are probably all just like NPM modules. But these are all the open source libraries It just keeps scrolling. It keeps scrolling. These are all the open source libraries that Discord uses in their application, probably whether it's their mobile app, their website, their Discord app. Oh, did the bitrate just like come to a crawl? But it's all listed here. And then, so that's the list of the names of all the packages. And then it says this software contains the following license and notices. Hey, Anthony Writes Code. Thank you for the raid. Shout out to Anthony Writes Code. They're a member of our Live Coders team. And I'll mention this really quick. So we got raided by Kit Boga. All my Kit Boga friends, you're still here. Just smile. Just smile if you're still here. But you should check out, if you haven't, the Live Coders team. Smile, smile. But if you go to twitch.tv/team/livecoders, there are a bunch of other people that stream live coding just like I do. Oh, look at all you. You're all still here. That's great. And welcome, Raiders. We're actually talking about open source licenses. And what we're showing right now is a practical example in the real world. So Discord uses all of these open source libraries. And on their website, it says, this software contains the following license and notice below. Now, there's more scroll. So we have an MIT license pasted in, and then there's another MIT license. The only difference between that one... Oh, never mind. They've broken it up into sections, but it just so happens that all of these Babel libraries are from Sebastian McKenzie. And so you see that all those libraries have this license, and then it has a list of these libraries and their licenses, and then a list of these libraries and their licenses. So that's kind of the practical example. Like, if you are using open source code in your project, you technically need a place, whether it's a web page, whether it's a file in your repo, that lists all of the things, all of the dependencies of your project that are also open source, and list out those licenses as well. And so you would technically do that. In Signaramba, thank you for the 50 bits. Forgot to add a license once. Hastily added one upon realization. Scary stuff. I think that's what she said. Yeah. So always add a license. Awesome. That was fun. I think that's it. I think I might just keep that as a YouTube video because it's kind of exciting to see all the people. So can everyone just say, bye, YouTube. Bye, YouTube. We're going to clip that. It's going to go on YouTube. And also, we have this content emote. Now, so I do watch Sushi Dragon, and he always has like the quality content, and so we have this nice little content emote that looks like YouTube. Bye, YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.